So now we are going to study the next topic, which is selecting human resources. In this topic, we are going to learn how organizations select the human resources. So in the previous topic, we studied that how do the organizations create the pool of suitable applicants, and here we are going to learn how do the organizations identify that among those candidates who are suitable for the job. So this is a definition of the selection process. It is, in simple words, it means the process of choosing individuals who fulfill the qualifications of the job in the organization. And after that, we do the placement, which is setting the person in the required job. So we do this based on the applicant's knowledge, skills, and abilities. That means the KSA or the competencies. So we take the competencies of the candidates and we check whether the competencies match with the requirements of it. So in order to do that, the criteria or the predictors of the job performance are identified, and then these are used to identify what sort of KSA is required to do the job. So, for example, for an accountant, the required criteria would be to have the required knowledge of accountancy and then to be good in maths. These are the criteria. For a marketeer, the criteria would be to have understanding about the markets in the business and also to be a good communicator. In this way, it depends on the type of job that the person is going to do. So we are not going to go into the details of these things, that is the validity of the job, validity of the criteria of use, selecting the candidates, recruiting the candidates. So we are not going to study about concurrent and predictive validity. So basically from page 228, up to 230, these are omitted. Then from 230, we are going to talk about the selection responsibilities. So in case of the selection process, the HR manager as well as the operational manager also participates in the selection process. So who are the operational managers? For example, if we are hiring someone in the accounting department and the accounts manager is the operational manager. So the HR manager and the operational managers or the functional managers both have separate responsibilities in the selection process. So if you look at this table, you can understand what are the responsibilities of the HR unit and the managers. So we will go through this in brief. So the HR unit's responsibility is to provide the applicants pool, then conduct the initial screening, could be based on the basic profile of the applicants, and to obtain information, background information about the applicants, how they are, how they did in the previous organizations, these types of things. For the managers, the responsibility is to match their credentials with the requirements of the job and to take the final selection decision. So, what are the stages or steps in the selection process that is summarized in this table, in this diagram? So, you can see that first the applicants express their job interest and they apply in the job. Then, once the companies collect these resumes, then they do some pre-employment screening. So, they go through the CVs, they reject some candidates who do not meet the basic requirements, like in terms of education or experience, and then they go for the application form. So they give the candidates certain form to fill them up, and these forms are used to collect additional information from the applicant. Then the candidates are interviewed, and they also go through certain tests. It could be written tests or aptitude tests. It could be tests on their functional area, or it could be generalized tests. Then from there, the organizations shortlist some candidates, and then they do the background investigation, and then the candidates are invited for additional interviews if necessary. These are done specially for higher positions, senior positions in the organization, where the candidates are scrutinized more and more. And then if they are found suitable, then they're given the conditional job offer. That is, the candidate is selected. So the company gives the offer. It is a conditional, that is, the candidates need to pass the medical test, and also the candidates need to show other documents like the educational documents and release letter from the immediate past organization. From there, if everything is fine, if the candidate can pass the medical examination, then the candidate is given the final offer. It could be an offer letter or appointment letter. So after that, the candidate will join the organization. So these are explained over here. So figure 8.5 is omitted from our syllabus. These things are omitted. This section talks about the different tests that the organizations conduct on the applicants. We have heard about assessment centers. It is quite popular. So organizations also employ assessment centers. This is also omitted, figure 8.7. Figure 8.8, that is selection interview. This is omitted. So for your knowledge, you need to know that there are different types of interviews that are conducted in the organizations based on the type of job that is being for which the candidates are interviewed, and also the requirements of the organization and the type of applicant. So based on the different types of interviews might be conducted. So these are the types of interviews. We are not going to study about the details of these interviews. Also, depending on the type of profession, the interviews are being conducted. So we do not need to know about the questions that are being used in the interviews. For your knowledge, you just need to know that different types of questions are being asked. The candidates are being asked these questions during the interview. So that is uh, this is an example of those types of questions. So this section talks about the background investigation, the type of question, the sources of the background information. So usually the immediate past employer is a source, and also other sources are there, like education institutions and these places. So just, I mean, you need to know this, that what are the sources of the background information. So educational institutions are there, then other places like credit history and these places are also sources of background information for the applicants. Um, Police records, all these things. So there are some constraints on background investigation as well. Organizations can't always go for all sorts of background investigation. They need to basically follow certain limits. So then finally the job offer is done and the applicant gives the decision and whether the applicant is going to accept the offer or not. So in case of global organizations, global employees, the hiring is a bit more complicated because here more factors need to be taken into consideration. For example, cultural issues need to be taken into consideration, and language issues, all these things need to be taken into consideration. Also, the family matters, like the applicant's family, how the applicant's family will accompany the applicant to the new country, or will the applicant's family stay back. So these things need to be thought of by the organizations in case of global employees. So in the selection process, legal aspects are also involved. For example, organizations need to be careful so that there is no discrimination in case of the applicants, all these things. So that's it in this chapter.